Hmm. This is the first time we went to Pride together.
Did you forget that this is the very first Pride in Japan again? Did you forget that this is the very first Pride in Japan again?
So, that's how it is. I understand everything now. And I'm happy you were with me.
Huh? Why are you carrying that boomerang around?
Shopping with Shimamura in this episode inspired me. I am, sharpening my boomerang skills. By the way, Hino, we're always together, but for some reason, I didn't see you around yesterday. Did you go somewhere after school?
What do you... Oh! Look at that humongous rainbow donut float. It looks like the parade is about to start. Let's hurry and get in line for the march.
Alright. Hino, let's hold hands during the parade march.
Huh? Well, I guess if it's so we don't get separated, it's alright. Ah! Look! The show, it's about to start as well. Hello, admirer. Grab a quick cup of tea and enjoy Adashima Volume 2, Chapters 4 and 5.
Chapter 4. Christmas Ongoing. Adachi's Thoughts. What was Christmas? What was it like? Was there a right way to handle it? What was the nature of the joy that originated from it? What sort of radiance did things born on Christmas have to them? How stressed would I get worrying about it? I decided to calm down a little. How many days would it take for the flames burning inside me to cool down? 1? 2? Likely more than that. Rarely did things go as planned, but this time, they had. I found myself brimming with excitement. More than anything, I was excited about going out with Shimamura on a special day. That was big. I was unable to fully recover my calm as massive whirlpools and waves stirred in my heart. I was being sucked inside them, tossed around by them, but I didn't dislike it. No, fighting against them felt fun, in a way. And all of that was happening while I was at work. Images of snowy landscapes and dazzling Christmas trees had filled my head, pushing out all other thoughts. I'd even forgotten about yanking the ends of my revealing china dress to better cover my thighs. I felt like I only needed to be careless for a second to find myself randomly jumping into the air. It had become a common occurrence for me to lift both of my arms after spinning my right shoulder around and then open and close my fists multiple times and then stare up at them and be filled with a strange sense of accomplishment. In fact, it happened multiple times in just a single night. I wonder, why did staring at the night sky through my window and watching snowflakes fall make me so happy? And yet, there were also some seeds of anxiety there that I hadn't managed to weed out yet. The question that was causing me the most stress at the moment was the following. What should we do? Though I'd been the one to ask her, I really didn't have a clue what people usually did on Christmas. Doing a repeat of my average year would lead us to just sitting around, doing nothing, and as such, I had some studying to do. With that in mind, I'd bought a magazine with a headline akin to Christmas Date Collection. But, much to my disappointment, it didn't include any statistics that showed where people liked to go. Not that we were going on a date. Regardless, the magazine did offer some recommendations. Going to see a movie, for example. It didn't seem all that bad of a choice, honestly. I wouldn't need to stress about where to go, and discussing what we thought about the film would offer a nice topic of conversation as well. There was a problem, however. I didn't know what sort of films Shimamura liked. She hardly ever spoke about herself, and as such, her tastes were a total mystery to me. Loving someone without knowing much about them. No, wait. That sounded pretty weird. What if instead it was loving someone precisely because you knew so little about them and wanted to get to know them better? Yeah, that might be it. Maybe. The magazine had also listed parties as an option. Hanging around in your house, eating delicious food and getting all lively. Something like that. Though I did have a feeling that it might be a better fit for the personalities of Shimamura and I also felt like I'd be totally lost trying to have a party with her family around. Yes, going out simply was the better option. There hadn't been many things in my life that had caused me this much headache. Even the high school entrance exam had been a piece of cake compared to this. There were still so many questions that needed to be answered. For example, what was I going to wear? Should I go shopping for new clothes? I wonder, what sort of clothes did Shimamura like?
Hey, no spacing out.
A figure suddenly appeared next to me. It was the shop manager, dancing in a really bizarre way. Just as cheerful as ever, this old lady. The other employee, the young woman who took care of the kitchen, had grown adjusted to Japanese and sounded quite fluent in her pronunciation. But as for this one, no change. She seemed to be of the opinion that as long as people understood her, it didn't matter. It was a pretty half-hearted stance to take, for sure, but in a way, I respected it. While this creative new Chinese cuisine restaurant, meaning yet to be determined, only had 2 regular employees besides me, the older manager lady and the younger kitchen lady, additional hands were dispatched from who knows where whenever there was a spike in customers, usually on the days following an advertisement campaign or the distribution of coupons. Needless to say, these people were all foreigners. Likewise, there were times when some other Taiwanese restaurant needed additional people, or a restaurant was being reopened and the night was anticipated to be busy, and we were sent there to help. People were being lent left and right. It seemed that there really was some sort of a connection that tied people from the continent together, and a firm connection at that. I did wonder, though, why couldn't they put a fraction of that effort into the menus? Not only did the picture of the jiaozi dumplings have a wrong number on them, the shapes were all wrong as well. With no customers currently in the restaurant, the manager continued dancing. I decided that it would be better to ask her sooner than later.
Can I take Christmas, the 25th off?
I could see the old lady's eyes sparkle as I asked. It was quite the change from her usual sleepy appearance.
That?
That's not really the right way to say it.
While a simple no would have sufficed, I'd ended up going with something far weirder.
The right way to say it?
Really? So the contents were fine, and all you needed to change was the way you said it? Furthermore, didn't the word date, by its definition, refer to spending time with someone you were interested in, in order to either deepen your relationship with them or to have fun? Something like that, at least. Anyway, in that case, calling it a date wouldn't be that far off. A date with Shimamura. Simply imagining those words, I felt like steam was going to shoot out from my ears. We hadn't even done anything yet, but as I grew more and more passionate, it became harder and harder for me to deny the truth. It might actually be a date, as far as I was concerned. Those thoughts quickly filled me with shame, causing just a slight feeling of regret to pass through my mind. Maybe I shouldn't have done this after all. The next day, I'd sat through a lesson without paying much attention, and before I knew it, the lunch break had begun and I was walking aimlessly down the hallway. Is everything really okay with me? I thought to myself as I turned around to retrace my steps. Had I subconsciously chased after Shimamura, like a girl from the Alps who yearned for the mountains? Thinking that, I strained my eyes, only to be met with disappointment. Shimamura was nowhere to be seen. I wonder what she would have thought if she had witnessed me tottering out from the classroom. A need arose to confirm which floor I was on. I turned my eyes towards the window. Based on the fact that I could see a lot of the sky and very little of the ground, I determined that I was, in fact, on the second floor. Now, for the next question. Should I return to the classroom, or should I head towards the cafeteria? Putting that aside for a moment, it really felt like I had been sleepwalking. Where you walked in the dream obviously didn't match where you walked in reality, however, and as such, the chances of bumping into someone or something were extremely high. Careful not to fall down the stairs, I managed to walk a tiny bit forward before my mind once again wandered off. This was difficult. In my moment of struggle, as I tried hard to decide whether to pull back or push forward, someone walked past me. I recognized that someone's face and let out a small yelp. She turned around. It was Hino. Her long hair flowed through the air, matching the swift rotation of her head.
Hello, Adachi. What are you doing there, staring into space? Did you stand up too fast and now you're feeling dizzy?
No, that's not it.
Are you waiting for Shimamura then?
That wasn't it either, unfortunately. I muttered something to the effect of no as a reply. Come to think of it, the other person wasn't with her. I'd honestly thought that the two of them were glued together.
Really rare to see you by yourself. Where's, Nagafuji?
What?
Hino checked her left side, then her right side. Could it really be that she hadn't noticed Nagafuji's absence before I pointed it out to her?
Wow, she's really not here. Pretty rare for her to lose sight of me.
What a strange way to put it. I found myself imagining Nagafuji as she absent-mindedly wandered off into the distance. It seemed a little strange by itself, but as I entered the image of her entering a candy store, it all suddenly made sense.
Well, whatever. I have a feeling that she's gonna show up at the cafeteria. I need to hurry there first and save her a seat.
Did she have confidence in her, or did she not? Anyway, that seemed like a natural endpoint to our conversation, and I assumed that Hino was simply going to walk off. Instead, she beckoned to me. She bent her finger back and forth as if signaling me to come stand next to her.
Wanna come eat with me, Adachi?
Me?
Who else? You're the only Adachi I know. Since you were walking this way, I assume you were heading there anyway.
A wide, carefree grin appeared on her face. I don't know if it was her sociable expression or her height that did it, but it really felt like I was conversing with someone younger than me. Of course, I'd never say that to her face. I had a feeling that if I did, she'd get really angry.
Sure, I'll come with you.
As there was something that I wanted to ask her anyway, I decided to accompany Hino. Thinking about it, this honestly might have been the first time I'd ever done anything with Hino without Shimamura being there. No, it definitely was the first time. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't come up with a single case where I'd hung around at school with someone other than her. I'd never felt any desire to, and as such, it was really the natural outcome. Why hadn't I? I pondered for a second before abandoning that line of thought to avoid falling into the bottomless rabbit hole that was the past. There was no room in my head to be worrying about such things at the present. The right half was filled with Shimamura, and the left with Christmas.
Come to think of it, I don't remember if I heard this from Shimamura or where, but is it true that you got a good grade on the English test?
Hino's sudden question caught me totally off guard. I'd never expected anyone other than Shimamura to ask me a question about myself. Wait, more importantly, what sorts of things about me was she going around telling people? It really bothered me that I didn't know.
I'm not sure if I'd call it good. It was more like average.
I replied to her, deciding to keep my answer safe.
Oh, really?
Hino exclaimed as a token gesture of admiration before
Hello!
suddenly greeting me in English. She'd given it no lead-in, and once again I was caught off guard.
Hello.
I wonder how long had passed between this idea popping into her mind and her saying it out loud. A second? Less than that? I couldn't help but smile. A little. Hino really felt like an elementary school student. In a good way. Oh, and I don't mean because of her height. I want to preface this by saying that I don't mean it negatively. I'd never considered Shimamura's presence as a nuisance. That being said, with her absent, I felt no reluctance towards spending time with Hino and Nagafuji. No, wait. Was it perhaps the other way around? Whenever Hino and Nagafuji were present, I felt a wall between Shimamura and I? In other words, I felt like those two were getting in the way. Neither of them were bad people. I knew that, and yet it was impossible for me to feel towards them the same way I did towards Shimamura. What was the difference between them? The answer to that question was beyond me. Even supposing that it was a simple matter of taste, it was still extremely difficult for me to clearly identify why I liked Shimamura and not those two. After all, love seldom follows logic. I walked down the hallway with Hino and arrived at the cafeteria's entrance after wrapping around the staff room. Cold winter wind blew through the corridor that connected it to the main building, claiming it as its own. A queue had formed in front of the meal ticket dispensaries installed there. It went without saying, but the majority of the people were shivering. The positioning of the machines was a common source of complaints, I heard, but regardless, the administration apparently had no plans to relocate them. So we joined the queue, and as we stood there, I decided to check my phone. Though I usually did it randomly when I was bored, right now there was a greater meaning to it. I sighed in relief as I verified that I hadn't, in fact, received a message from Shimamura. Not a second passed that I didn't worry about the possibility of her hitting me up with a simple, "Let's not do it, after all," and calling the whole thing off. There was no guarantee that we would be met with good weather that day. Quite the opposite. The trend was for things that mattered to me to not go well. I could only pray that this time would be different. Upon what grounds was I praying? Had I committed any good deeds lately? Not really. Well, not that I had many opportunities for those in the first place, considering my lack of contact with other people and all. Anyway, I decided to pledge that I'd do at least one before Christmas. After around 10 minutes of standing in line, it finally came my turn to order. I wanted something to warm up my body, and as such, ramen seemed like a good option.
I'll take that too.
Hino said, as she purchased the same meal ticket I had. Fun fact about the school cafeteria's ramen, it always came with a narutomaki added on top. I kind of felt like most other ramen places had stopped doing that.
Adachi, do you have any hobbies?
Hino suddenly asked me. We were once again standing in line, this time inside the dining hall in front of the counter. I remembered Shimamura having asked me something similar a while back. I also remembered the boring answer I'd given her. Regardless, I ended up replying to Hino in much the same way.
Not really.
It was a honest read. I really didn't. As such, there was no point trying to show off. No way could I say that thinking about Shimamura was my hobby.
Oh, really? Same as Shimamura then.
So I was a little startled by Hina suddenly bringing up that name. I sighed in relief. A few seconds later, as I was able to process the contents of her statement. It seemed that she hadn't read my mental state or anything like that. I thought hard about those words, and as I did, I could feel myself growing more and more elated. Same as Shimamura. Same as her.
Hey, why are you smiling? Did you just remember something funny?
Hino asked while drawing closer. Slightly panicked about what sort of face I was making. I shook my head in the air, telling her that it was nothing. Had Shimamura been here, there was a very real chance that she might have thought that I was a weirdo for randomly smiling. Even so, it was still a development compared to my parents saying that they couldn't tell what I was thinking, wasn't it? After getting my ramen, I headed towards the end of one of the long tables and sat down. The cafeteria was quite crowded, meaning there weren't at all that many seats left. Hina placed a napkin on a seat next to us, possibly to reserve it for Nagafuji. A thought crossed my mind as I stared at it. What if Shimamura came too? I instinctively glanced at the seat next to me, and it wasn't empty. Hina politely pressed her hands together, and, imitating her, I did the same. Then, almost as if observing her, I stared as she took her chopsticks and lift some noodles. I felt the same way the last time I'd eaten with her, but her behavior, every single one of her movements, they simply used with politeness. It was a little shocking, honestly. I'd always thought of her as someone very free-spirited. Perhaps her parents were really strict with her?
Hey,
Munching on bean sprouts, Hina lifted her head. I could see the tip of her nose glistening. I decided to just go for it and ask her the thing I'd been planning to.
do you know what Shimamura likes?
The first thing that came to anyone's mind when they thought about Christmas was presents. If I wasn't going to be getting anything from Shimamura, I still plan on giving her one. That was my naive assumption of how Christmas worked.
Hmm. She likes. Uh, what does she likes?
Hino asked me back, clearly puzzled. And so the questioner became the questionee. I slurped up a couple of noodles, and so did she. After munching some more bean sprouts, Hina took a sip of water and, still holding her chopsticks, followed her arms.
Now then, Shimamura's taste. She's not really the kind of person who likes talking about them.
Yeah, I know.
That was exactly what I felt too embarrassed to ask her directly. And even though it seemed unlikely that she will know, I'll try asking Hina instead.
Have you ever gone like shopping with her or anything?
Shopping, huh? Yeah, I have. Multiple times. We've been to a bookstore and also a tea shop, just to name a few.
Me?
Well, to be frank, it was more of a me thing. Shimamura was more just looking around. No, actually, I think there were these tea leaves that she liked and said smelled nice.
On the black tea shelf, maybe? Or on the Japanese tea one?
Tea, huh?
That might not actually be a bad present. It definitely felt like she'd be more willing to accept it compared to me getting all worked up and randomly picking something by myself. Above all, she liked it. That meant a lot.
You remember the name of that tea?
I asked her, possibly sounding a little more intense than I had meant to. Hina put down her chopsticks before once again folding her arms.
Give me a second. What was it again? I don't think it was barley tea. Which shelf was it on? Nope, sorry. That name's right on the tip of my tongue, but it's just not coming to mind. If I saw it, then I should be able to remember it. Probably.
If you saw it. Will you come look for it with me?
The name of the tea was the list of my problems. I didn't even know the location of the store. As such, my only option was to once again ask Hina for help. Excuses such as that I was bad at doing things with other people just weren't going to get it here. Hina muttered. Her eyes drifted around for a moment, but after a while, she replied calmly.
Shouldn't you ask Shimamura to come with you instead?
You only needed to think about it logically to reach that conclusion. Yes, that would be the easiest way to do it. However, there was a problem. It was quite difficult for me to ask her under these circumstances. There was a very real chance that if I did, she'd immediately realize what I was doing. And if that happened, well, it would be regrettable to say the least.
Ah, I see.
Hina exclaimed as if she had realized something after a few moments of silence.
In that case, sure. I'll come with you and help you choose.
I wasn't quite sure she'd come to that conclusion. But either way, it seemed that she understood that there was something that was meant to be kept secret from Shimamura.
Oh, sure, thanks.
Today after school sounds good to you? It's at the mall.
Okay, got it.
With it down believing being as small as it was, places that were suited for hanging out were naturally limited. In our case, we pretty much just bounce back and forth between the station and the mall. It seemed more than likely that we will be utilizing at least some part of the mall during Christmas as well. Couldn't really expect any nice looking scenery or anything like that. In other news, I was about to head out with Hino, huh? I felt pretty nervous, but in a different way compared to Shimamura.
Still, Shimamura, is it her birthday soon?
No, I don't think so.
I was pretty sure that she was already 16. If any birthday had come soon, it was definitely mine.
Wait, so it's not that kind of present?
I could tell that Hino was confused. What kind is it then? She seemed to ponder for a second before quickly realizing that what money it was. Panicking, I began my attempt to fix this mess. My thinking moved swiftly, but unfortunately, not in the way that I wanted it to.
That kind.
I kept repeating those words over and over again, not sure myself what they were supposed to mean. Worried that she was going to press me further on it, I grew more flustered by the second. But just then,
Ah, there's Hino.
Nagafuji walked in. Hino lifted her head, clearly delighted by her appearance. The tip of her nose once again glistened. I felt like thanking Nagafuji. She really couldn't have shown up at a more perfect moment. She was carrying a bag filled with pastries from the school canteen. Was that perhaps where she'd gone? Purchase them? I did wonder for a moment why she had gone out of her way to come here carrying them. But after thinking about it a little more, I found the answer. Because Hino was here. That was the nature of the relationship between them. They didn't naturally meet up without having to arrange it beforehand. I was a little jealous of it, if I'm being honest.
Oh, you're late, Nagafuji. Just where did you get yourself lost this time?
Completely ignoring Hina's question, Nagafuji sat down next to her before extending her hands towards her head. She then gave her soft-looking hair a pat.
What the hell?
Hina barked, sounding like she was imitating someone.
You haven't gotten smaller after all.
Huh?
I was thinking that maybe I lost sight of you because you'd grown smaller.
So she really had gotten lost, huh? I was still in shock from that revelation as Hina smacked Nagafuji's head in return. It made a light, satisfying sound. The two then began hitting as if nothing had happened. They really were close, huh? Personally, I don't think I'd ever be able to smack Shimamura's head.
Sorry, Adachi. Did I keep you waiting?
Hino, who'd been waiting for me by the school gate at this point, was now for some reason waving at me. I found myself struggling with the proper response. Like, she was heavily joking. I got that. I just wasn't sure what sort of joke I should think back at her. Hina was still there awkwardly holding her hand in the air as I thought about it for a few moments.
Getting my bike, so I wasn't really waiting. And no, sorry. Let's just move on.
Not really a jokester, huh? You're in the same camp as Shimamura then.
While being placed in the same camp as Shimamura did make me happy, it also caused me to feel other emotions, more mixed emotions. Does Shimamura feel like me? I can't imagine that what I will ever fall in love with her.
Still, I do appreciate that you thought about it so hard.
Thanks.
I ended up being complimented for my efforts. Don't get me wrong, her words did definitely offer me comfort.
Nagafuji isn't here?
Oh, come on. I'm not her mother or anything. It's not like we're always together.
Hino replied, pretending to be offended. Honestly, based it on their heads, Nagafuji seems more like the mother. I decided not to say that out loud. Or if they were siblings, Hina will be the little sister. That comment, I also kept it to myself.
Anyway, she said she had something that she needed to do. That happens sometime, like once a year.
Really? Just once per year? I was pretty shocked. Hina was likely exaggerating, but still. Regardless, in a sense, I feel like I had more trouble understanding Nagafuji than I did Shimamura.
Now then, shall we get going?
Her hands raised above her head, Hina began hopping forward. Despite how cold it was, and despite the fact that we hadn't gotten even a glimpse of the sun for the entire day, she sure was full of energy, huh?
You're not gonna ride on the back?
I am. I'm just waiting till we get a bit further away from the school, otherwise the teacher are gonna yell at us.
She said while briskly walking away from the school premises. Though Shimamura did always sound like she was joking around when she called Hino and Nagafuji good students, I could now see that it really was the case. A delinquent such as her wouldn't have waited till we were outside of the school to happen. Really, the delinquent way was just so much easier. Strange.
What is it?
Hino asked as she looked over her shoulder, almost as if she had sensed my stare.
No, I was just thinking about what a good student you are.
Haha, freeze me more.
She pretended to command me with a triumphant look on her face. We soon turned a corner, after which she immediately got on the bike. Her tiny hands, way lighter than Shimamura's, rest against my shoulders. Despite it being the afternoon on a weekday, that didn't stop the parking lot of the mall from being completely full. And it wasn't just the cars, but bikes very similar to mine as well, making it a very difficult decision to park there. I was worried that either someone would mistake my bike for theirs and take it, or that I did the same to someone else. And trust me, I'd had plenty of experience of that happening at our school parking station. We walked in through an entrance next to a pet shop on the first floor. As I had no other choice than to rely on Hina to guide me, I was left to simply follow her. Speaking of Hino, she was currently talking on the phone.
Yes, exactly. I don't really have any particular reason for it, but since I'm going there, I wanted to know if you wanted me to buy something. Yeah, I'm listening. How many? 5? Sure, got it.
From the way she was talking, I could assume that the person on the other end was a family member of hers. Solely in order to act like I was doing something, I decided to check my phone too to see if I had gotten any messages. No, none whatsoever. Good. Not a text from Shimamura had ever been that common in the first place. I honestly can't remember there having any after the whole sit-up thing. To this day, I still wonder what the heck that's been about. Inside a mall, we passed various stores, such as a cake shop with regular rotating cakes as well as the one that sold wine. We then reached an intersection, which was where I spotted the tea shop, standing opposite to a bread store. I wasn't sure why. When I had heard the word tea, I'd imagined something greenish. Instead, due to all of the bags of tea in display on the shelves, the store was more on the brown side. although I suppose that could be considered a tea color as well. Characters that seem to form some super old personal name were etched onto the sign outside. Miku Ninja or something. The instant we stepped inside, a store employee who'd been standing by the entrance offered me a small paper cup filled with something. That something was, well, of course, tea. The cup was around the head of my pinky finger, hung entirely barely a mouthful of liquid. As such, I gulped it down without much thought. That turned out to be a big mistake, however. The tea was further than I anticipated, causing my tongue to jolt as it came into contact with it. I could feel my eyes shooting wide open as well. The wave of heat eventually passed, and I could feel it. Finally get a sense of the taste. There was really only one word to describe it.
Bitter.
That was how I honestly felt, and I went as far as to state it out loud. The employee, having taken back the now empty cup, smiled wryly at my response.
Thank you for your patronage.
She then stared at Hino.
Thanks.
Hino stared back, lifting her arm slightly. No simple ring had been offered to her. That, combined with the way she immediately began browsing through the shelves, gave out the impression that she was very familiar with the place.
You come here often?
I suppose. People from my household drink a lot, but they also don't.
She answered, being purposefully vague as if to dodge my question. That expression, puzzled, plus the fact that she came to buy tea in the first place kind of made her feel like some proper young lady. Wait, was that prejudice? Anyway, Hina grabbed a basket and tossed 5 identical bags of tea into it. It seemed like those were the ones she'd been asked to buy earlier on the phone. On the surface, the bags were written the words ginger tea.
Those seem like they really warm you up.
I randomly stayed while staring at her from the side. While remaining silent would have been the more pleasant option, I felt a weird obligation to maintain at least some level of conversation between us. Perhaps it was due to the strange situation I found myself in today. Being accompanied by someone to do shopping. Hina groaned as she lifted up one of the bags of tea and struck its surface with her fingers.
It's effective for those who are sensitive to cold, I hear. From my parents.
You don't drink it yourself, Hino?
Nope, I'm not sensitive to cold after all.
Hina then tossed the bag back into the basket.
Then she turned her head towards the shelf next to the counter, beginning her search for Shimamura's tea. That was the shelf with all the black tea. Next to it was the Chinese tea shelf. Hino's eyes bounced between the two. A smell caught my attention, and I quickly identified it as coming from the bottles filled with tea leaves standing below each shelf. I didn't recognize any of the brands, and so I randomly picked one and sniffed it as a test. Not really sure why though. I was completely out of my field. Some tea leaves were a little more refreshing. Some were a little more bitter. But other than that, they all smelled the same to me. Hino was also picking up bottles one by one and sniffing them. In her case, she probably was able to tell them apart by smell, huh? I took a step back and, for a moment, simply stared at her from behind. I then look over my shoulder, turning my head towards the vast space at the other end of the aisle. Chairs meant for resting had been installed there, with a large, decorated Christmas tree standing in the center of it. The electric candles wrap around it flush red, then blue, then yellow, and while it didn't really stand out while the sun was up, during the night, I could definitely imagine attracting attention. The tree also had some other shiny ornaments, such as apples and stars hanging from it. I vividly remembered having seen something like this in a picture book back when I had been a child. Christmas drawing near, a town and its people, a great number of them walking by the tree. I faced forward. Then I hung my head without having meant to do so. Being completely honest for a second, it was pretty weird, wasn't it? To be so excited about it, going out on Christmas with another girl. I felt confident in saying that Christmas wasn't something that Shimamura was waiting for eagerly. She was neither excited nor thrilled for it. No, it was just another event in her calendar. There was something massive of a difference in enthusiasm between us. A difference that I wasn't sure if I wanted Shimamura to know about or not. If the answer was that I didn't, the right course of action would have been to not do all these things behind her back. So perhaps I really did, after all. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about how that might end up widening the gap between us. I was scared. To put this conflict into simple terms, it was no different from unrequited love.
Hey, Adachi, I want to ask you something.
Hino said as she turned towards me, holding a bag of tea in her hand.
What?
I asked after panicking slightly and hastily lifting my head.
Are you the kind of person that if someone hands you something confidently but it turns out to be the wrong thing, you get angry?
No, I don't think that I'm that cruel.
That's good to hear then. Okay, this should be it.
Hino handed me the bag of tea she'd been gripping. It seemed that she'd had surprisingly little trouble remembering. That bag I received had the words Legend of Africa written on it. It wasn't really the sort of name that made me think of Shimamura. Was it black tea? African tea? Something like Shizuoka tea? No, probably not.
Wanna take these as a single payment?
Hino asked me.
Sure.
I stated back and tossed the bag into the basket she was holding. Once we were out of the store, I paid Hino the money I owed her for the tea. She then pointed towards a close-by coffee shop. There were many customers there. The shiny plastic ice cream cone standing outside also seemed lifeless in a way.
Wanna grab a quick cup of tea or something?
Sure, why not?
I did want to thank her for sticking with me for this long, and treating her to a cup of tea seemed like the perfect way to do so. We walked a short distance there, short enough to cross with a single hop, and stopped before the entrance.
I'll pay.
I pulled out my wallet before Hino could and held it in the air, as if to show that it was my intention to pay her for her drink. Her eyes shot wide open.
Why?
Thanks for coming with me.
Oh, did I just find your good side?
She praised me in the most blatant way possible. It made me happy to once to be decisive. We received drinks we've ordered and choose our seats. I was there that I noticed it. There were 4 of them. 4 chairs. Don't get me wrong, that itself was perfectly normal. What was weird was the chairs were as simple as they came, like something you'd find in a middle school industrial arts class made by a student. Just basic chairs made of wood. Maybe they'd originally been meant for a different establishment. But after that place got shut down, they were repurposed here? They really gave off the appearance of being handmade. I could hear the chair creak as I leaned against its back, likely retrofitted by force.
It's kinda cold in here. My legs are freezing.
Hino stated, gripping her coffee cup and lightly tapping her shoes together. Indeed, the chilly air surrounding our feet seemed completely unaffected by the indoor heating. It appeared that the reason for the low volume of customers lay silently below the tables. I hated hot drinks, which was the reason why I was drinking mine sip by sip while constantly blowing it to cool it down. Even if it had been the perfect temperature, I felt that in my current state, I would still find myself pretending to cool it down. That way, I could focus solely on the coffee and use it as an excuse for not talking. As I once again pressed the cup on my lips, still having said nothing, Hino suddenly pointed at me.
Tell me if I'm right. You're uncomfortable because we don't have anything to talk about.
She was right. Completely right. It was like she'd read my mind. I was really amazed at first, but the more I thought about it, the less impressive it became. Anyone could have figured that out based on my silence. I replied to her with a fake smile, only for it to be met by Hino's wide grin. The fact that she was able to put on such a carefree smile on a moment's notice might actually have said a lot about her character.
It's the same thing that happened when I come with Nagafuji. Well, in her situation, she makes less sense than when she opened.
Hino's sentence was cut short. Her mouth remained open. She then lifted her head to the right. The way her eyes moved made it seem like she was looking past me towards the street. I felt compelled to look over my shoulder. In the next instant, my eyes shot wide open, so wide that my eyelids hurt. When I saw was Shimamura walking with Hino. Shimamura's hand was placed on her shoulder, displaying intimacy. I instinctively exchanged glances with Hino.
So, when she said she had things to do, I see.
Hino said and nodded awkwardly before propping her chin with her arm. Having not noticed us, Shimamura and Nagafuji quickly disappeared behind a corner. My eyes hurt. The reason for that was simple. I'd forgotten to blink. Even my eyelids were dumbfounded.
She told you?
I assumed that by she, Hino meant Shimamura. I shook my head silently. Just then, I realized that I was shaking. But why? They were friends, and as such, there was nothing weird about them going shopping together. That was what I was trying to convince myself of. And yet, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right here. Seeing the two of them make merry right before Christmas was an impactful sight. I felt like I was the one of those Daruma dolls, and that my body had just been smacked with a hammer made of discomfort. The illusion that I was doing alright vanished, giving way to a sense of uneasiness and anxiety. I could tell just how low my blinking rate had dropped, based on the dryness of my eyes. Suddenly, Hino leaned forward and tapped my shoulder.
Good grief.
She spoke monotonously. You could tell from her tone that she wasn't having it.
You really are a silly girl, huh?
What do you mean?
I replied, utterly bewildered. I turned my face towards her as quickly as I could. I was now feeling a little dizzy.
Hey, wanna tail them?
Hino suggested, sounding like she was both joking and not. In an instant, my mouth opened wide, way wider than I had imagined. Yet my voice remained stuck in my throat. My lips pressed together and then drew apart, like those of a goldfish gasping for air. All while my brain was doing its best to catch up. The little girl inside me was ordering me to go. That was all the more reason for me to refuse.
Let's not. It looks like they are busy.
The second that sentence left my mouth, I realized with just how much malice I had uttered the word busy, and felt pretty disgusted with myself as a result. It was pretty normal for Shimamura to be with other people. If anything, you would have expected her to do it more. So then, why was my heart so restless? In truth, I didn't even want to follow her, but rather run up to her and silently stand next to her. While Hino was definitely acting calmer than I was, I got the sense that she shared my sentiment, at least to some extent. A certain sensation stood out. It was that of something brushing down both of our heads.
You really are a good student, huh, Adachi?
Hino stated, poking fun at me with a faint smile on her face. I really wish that I would have thanked her for today before atmosphere turned into this, because now I'd miss my chance. A mixture of emotions rushing through my head. I gulped down my coffee and left the mall. Had Hino followed me to the parking lot? Or had we separated before that? I really couldn't remember. My fingers moved towards the screen of my phone, then away from it, then back towards it.
Why were you with Nagafuji?
The sentence I had written felt really high-handed. Especially the why part. Those words perfectly encapsulated what was really going on in my heart. And I hated it. Deep down, I knew that this is jealousy. In all likelihood, she just had some fun time with her. That was probably all there was to it. And yet, I felt like I'd been betrayed. I'd gone and gotten my feelings hurt, all by myself. Here I was, questioning her even though she'd done nothing wrong. I knew that I shouldn't be doing this. And yet, my heart did nothing in the way of banishing those thoughts. I found myself conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to ask her so badly that it hurt. But on the other, I was unsure whether or not I was in a position where I could. Was it okay for me to meddle in her personal matters? Let's say that I decided to go out with Hino or someone without Shimamura's permission. No, that was a bad way to put it. Let's go without telling her. Anyway, even if I did that, I doubt that she'd really think much about it. I could easily imagine her just saying something like, "Oh, that's rare," and moving on. This is all to say, if Shimamura would have moved past it that easily, then I needed to do so too. Wait, why did I? What was I to Shimamura? I'd been about to get totally carried away, and it was that question that helped me cool down a little. I tossed my phone away and collapsed on my bed. Though my hair was still wet from the bath I had just taken, I felt no desire to get up, and instead simply laid there, stretching out my arms. I grabbed the bag of tea that I had placed next to my pillow. I'd been the cashier kindly gift wrapped it for me. Apparently, Hino had arranged that. As I stared at it, I could feel the storm of emotions within my heart melt into the flames that filled it. I was Shimamura's friend. That was all there was to it. I had to realize it. What hubris had it been to assume that I was the only one? The only one who went out with her. The only one who was around her. Somewhere deep in my mind, I really had managed to convince myself of that. It's been a massive misunderstanding. And the fact that it hurt me really showed off my mistakes. No matter how excited I got, those feelings were always one-sided.
Regret.
Something resembling black coal still floated around in my heart. It'd been there since school ended, and little by little, I was trying to crunch it down. Though it was thick and tasted bitter, I felt I wouldn't be able to fall asleep before it was gone. Alright, I'd finished eating it. Now then, it was time to start over. Shimamura and I were normal friends. I might have wished for something different, but at the present, this was how things were. In addition, I didn't want to close the distance between us in one go. No, it needed to be one step at a time. That's what yesterday, today, and tomorrow were for. That's what Christmas was for. However, there were also facts that I had to stay very aware of. For example, the closer you became to someone, the less you could hide from them. It was similar to sticking your hand too close to a fire and getting burned. You always had to be careful how much you let the other person know. If Christmas was just a pretense, what was I truly trying to convey to Shimamura? Affection? No. No. Love. Love? No. No. No! Whatever it was warm. Warm liquid pouring into my chest. Though she might find it burning hot right now. If I were to place it on her hands, would she eventually begin thinking of it as pleasantly warm?
Shimamura.
Simply whispering her name out loud filled my chest with warmth. I felt like it was an echo of that word. Shimamura. That would help me survive the winter of this year.
Bonus chapter. Yashiro the Visitor Part 2. I go home, do my kanji exercises and practice the recorder, but what should I do after that? That was a question of my mind as I walked forward. Just then, I hear a noise. Grrr! I look over my shoulder. Whoa! I turn around and Yachi was there. This was the second time she shocked me by showing up without a warning. And so, I once again encountered Yachi on my way home from the school. On one side of the road stood a community center, and from the other, the school for the handicapped. Everywhere else, it was all per farms. I always walked home till there, and so did many other kids. Yachi really stood out among them, however. I could feel everyone staring at her. It was a little embarrassing if I'm being honest. She replaced her hat with a muffler, possibly due to it now being firmly winter. Compared to Yachi, who felt like she was made of softness and light, the muffler almost seemed like the heavier of the two. She had a unique sense of flirtiness to her. Her hairstyle followed this as well. It was tied behind her head with a butterfly knot, giving it a slightly strange quality.
Shimamura! The little one.
Yeah, that's me.
Was it really necessary for her to vocalize the word parenthesis?
I'm going to call you Shou. I can't tell you apart otherwise.
What kind of a nickname is that? It doesn't have anything to do with my real name.
Well, whatever. It felt fresh, if nothing else. In school, all anyone called me as Shima.
Are you on your way back from school too, Yachi?
Mere seconds after that question left my mouth, I noticed that Yachi wasn't carrying anything. No croquettes either.
I do not go to school. I already graduated years ago.
You don't have school? Must be nice.
Right?
He said proudly. Really? Why was she barely taller than me then? While I did know that not every adult was tall and some were quite small, still, it made me wonder. Something about her statement smelled fishy. I walked to the side of the road and leaned against the fence of the school for the handicap. Yachi lined up next to me. I looked at the fence and her hair. While both of them were blue in color, there was a world of difference between them. Whereas the paint of the fence had mostly faded away, Yachi's shine felt completely fresh. It was comparing all vegetables to ones straight from the farm. Still, I had to wonder, when had we become friends? Just the other day, I'd been running away from her while she chased me. But whatever, she had given me a croquette.
Hey,
What is it?
Yachi always spoke really politely. At the same time, I somehow got a feeling that she wasn't the most fluent speaker.
is it really true that you're an alien?
Naturally, I don't lie. Never have. Never will.
She said, wagging her finger from side to side. I felt a little annoyed by her statement. If she wasn't a liar, then that would make sis one.
Well then, show me proof. Show me proof that you're an alien.
With my hands, almost like I was scooping up water or something, and I took it out towards her. With a calm smile on her face, yet she once again wagged her finger.
Showing you proof would be a violation of the agreement, which means that I cannot do it.
Huh?
They are quite strict about these things in space.
Well, if it's a rule or something, I guess I have to give up.
Kinda felt like she'd come out with that on the spot to dodge my question. Was she lying after all? Still, her hair was blue.
Ooh, what is this?
Yachi asked as she grabbed the object sticking out of my backpack. She yanked it, causing the bag to shake and the straps to dig slightly into my shoulders. Yachi's hair shook too, and in the next instant, a wave of soft light surged upon me. I found myself a little shocked.
You've never seen a recorder?
What's a recorder?
What Yachi had pulled out was my recorder bag. This proved it. If she had never seen a recorder, then her graduating from elementary school had to be a lie. Yachi took the recorder out of this bag and tapped it with her fingers.
It's a musical instrument. You hold it like this, and then blow in this hole.
I explained it to her proudly. Yachi nodded while listening carefully. Though I would normally have been against the idea of someone else playing my recorder, If that someone was Yachi, I didn't really mind. I always got this sense of translucency of her. Perhaps that was the reason why. We were well into winter and it was quite cold outside. But as I stood next to her, that coldness transformed into something more refreshing, like touching cool spring water. Yet she placed the recorder on her lips, and in the next instant, a horrible, screeching sound pierced my ears. It seemed that she had blown as hard as she possibly could.
Whoa, whoa.
Yachi's eyes were now spinning for blowing too much. I found myself laughing a little as I watched her. Though the aura surrounding her had given off the vibe that she could do anything, it turned out that in reality she was kinda just average. I felt a step closer to her.
Oh, this is quite the extreme instrument.
No, that's just you.
It seemed that she hadn't been lying about not knowing what a recorder was. No way would that have been the blowing technique she would have chosen if she had. I wonder what sort of life did Yachi live? The list of things that stuck out of me was quite long.
Try blowing it a bit more gently.
Ah, that reminds me. The special sale is starting soon. I need to hurry or I'm gonna miss it.
With quick movements, Yachi pulled herself off the fence. A special sale? Where? At the supermarket? Or maybe at the meat shop? Feelings of disappointment filled me as she handed the recorder back to me. It would have been really exciting about teaching her how to play. Also, how did she know what time it was? She hadn't looked at a clock or anything. Yet she looked over her shoulder and with a bright smile on her face, waved at me. I felt compelled to say goodbye, but just as I opened my mouth,
Huh?
I was left staring at her, my eyes wide open, unable to move. That was how greatly I'd been shocked. Just what had that sound been?
Oh, sorry. Goodbye.
Waving her hand, Yachi ran off.
Hey, wait!
I tried to make her stay for just a bit longer, but she was way too fast, and I was forced to give up. More importantly, what had that sound been? I was curious, extremely curious. It was a word I'd never heard before. No, it didn't even sound like a word. It didn't feel like I had come for her throat, but rather like it had vibrated my ears directly. Was it English? French? Or perhaps... no way!
Some space language?
Was it really? I scratched my head. As I did, particles of light that had stayed behind as Yachi ran off landed on my nose and eyes. I whipped them off with my finger and blew them away, and moments later they vanished into the air. A thought crossed my mind as I stared up at them. Was Yachi made of these particles? Was she really an alien, or was she just pretending to be one? Truth or a lie? Whatever it was, one thing remained certain. She really was mysterious.
Chapter 5 Christmas Ongoing Shimamura's Thought. I sat in my seat and stared as Adachi rushed out the classroom the second lunch break began, leaving her books scattered on her desk. Was everything really okay with her? The way she walked really gave the impression that she didn't have a destination in mind. Did it have to do with our Christmas plans? There was a chance. While I had thought about chasing after her, that possibly caused me to reconsider it, and I ultimately decided against it. Adachi had been acting like that ever since she came over to my place and we agreed to go somewhere on Christmas. It was almost like her mind was too busy celebrating to pay attention to what her body was doing. There were times when she'd randomly start grinning, sometime in the middle of the class. There really was only one word to describe how it looked like from an outside perspective. Strange. Perhaps the delinquent Adachi, the one with a blank expression and a cold tone, had fled somewhere with the arrival of winter. Then again, I had to wonder if the mental image I used to have of her had in any way been based in reality. Trust me, I knew how that felt. Far too often people would wrongly assume that I exclusively got my clothes from Shimamura, the store. Based on the fact that she still hadn't returned, I could assume that Adachi had gone either to the canteen or the cafeteria. I was just thinking about what I should do myself when a rare sight caught my attention. Nagafuji, standing by herself. In most cases, Hino was with her, but nope, not this time. Not to say that those two were glued together or anything, because they certainly weren't. Readjusting her glasses, Nagafuji turned my way. Looking at her this way, I noticed that she was quite tall as well. I felt a little jealous.
Have you happened to have seen Hino?
If you don't know where she is, there's no way that I did.
Yes, that's true.
Nagafuji affirmed, though I had meant my sentence as a joke. Nagafuji's tone made it sound like she'd taken it completely seriously. Well, not that she was wrong. I rarely spent time with her and Hino, and even when I did, it was seldom for all that long.
I needed to wipe my glasses, and by the time I put them back on, I'd lost sight of her.
It was really difficult for me to judge whether that was supposed to be a joke or not. That's how it always was with Nagafuji. Trying to analyze her statement constantly led to mental fatigue. Hino was pretty much the same. Perhaps friendship was something that took priority over the feelings of the majority.
Anyway, did you bring lunch today?
Nope. Thought I'd go to the cafeteria.
Oh. Well, maybe that's where Hino went.
Oh!
Nagafuji exclaimed in awe and clapped her hands. To be fair, there weren't that many places for a student to go during lunch break. Even Nagafuji should have been able to reach that conclusion if she'd taken a moment to think about it. Was there really nothing going on in her head? Her glasses seemed pretty useless if that was the case. On the other hand, she had gotten pretty good grades on the exam. I wondered, how did that work?
Are you going to, Shimamura?
No, I'm leaning more towards the canteen today. Anyway, we can walk some of the way together.
I took my wallet out of my bag and exited the classroom alongside Nagafuji. It was quite rare for us to be walking side by side. Whereas the difference in height between us caused me to naturally tilt my head slightly upwards, Nagafuji's head barely moved. Her eyes were also pointing straight ahead, so much so that I couldn't help but grow a little worried. If she tried walking like this outside, she'd probably get run over by a car, wouldn't she? Well, I suppose it wasn't really a problem considering Hino was always with her. Come to think of it, what was that club she supposedly attended? I couldn't really imagine Nagafuji communicating smoothly with anyone other than Hino, even if the two of us did manage to reach mutual understanding on things surprisingly often. Oh, right. Maybe I should try asking Nagafuji? In a way, I felt that she'd answer me more honestly than Hino would.
Will you be doing something on Christmas, by the way?
As it seemed a little unfair to leave everything to Adachi, I decided to come up with something for us to do myself. That was why I asked Nagafuji. I thought that maybe I could use her as a reference. Speaking of whom, her eyes had now turned toward me.
I'm going to eat chicken curry.
That really wasn't the answer I'd been expecting. Not even close.
Is that so?
Could we go to a curry place? Or make curry together, perhaps? No, wait. That felt wrong.
Anything else? Like, for example, are you and Hino Wait, no. You will say it so if you were.
I quickly brushed off my question. Why had I even asked her that? Did going somewhere with Adachi really bother me so much that I need to feel validated by someone else holding a similar costume?
Hino?
Nagafuji stared at me, blinking in surprise.
What about her?
It's nothing. Just forget about it.
Oh, really? Hino. Hino.
Paying absolutely no attention to what I was saying, Nagafuji began pondering about something by herself. What that something was, I had no idea, other that it had to do with Hino. Her arms were folded, and her head rested tilted slightly to the side.
It kind of feels like Hino's always at our house.
You sure? Okay.
Speaking of her, I think we used to exchange Christmas presents when we were little.
She suddenly added to her answer. Turns out, Nagafuji also had a strange side to her.
Presents? I see.
That might not be a bad idea. Giving her a present myself, that was... Exchanging them would be coordinating the whole thing with her beforehand, which, given how Adachi was acting at the moment, wasn't something that I really felt like doing. The gift I'd give her could act as a topic of conversation and possibly liven up the mood a little. That was my goal. I quickly faced with another problem, however. What did Adachi want? What did she like? It would have been simple to just ask her, but that kind of felt boring. Plus, I thought it seemed extremely unlikely that she'd do so. It would be pretty awkward if she were to say that she wanted an expensive pair of shoes or something. With thoughts like those filling my head, I walked down the stairs and through the hallways before finding myself in front of the school canteen. A small sales area had been set up in the corner of the building, all run by a single old lady. The walls inside were painted white, though the light did cause them to appear slightly yellow. It was the color of the crates they used to bring in the bread for school meals. The line here wasn't nearly as long as the one at the cafeteria. After waiting a few moments for the handful of customers would come before me to finish their purchases, I was able to take my time choosing what I'd buy.
Oh, they sell these here.
Nagafuji asked while staring curiously at the list of items that were for sale.
What? You've never bought them before?
I don't think I've ever been here before. I usually bring lunch from home, and when I don't, I go to the cafeteria.
I see.
Personally, I came here quite regularly. It also had been like that during my days of skipping class on the second floor of the gym. This had always been my preferred place to come buy lunch. Believe it or not, I've actually become acquainted with the lady who ran the store thanks to that. She'd greet me with a smile, and I'd bow my head. Anyway, after thinking about it for a while, I ended up randomly picking something from the sweet pastry section. Speaking of which...
I'm not trying to criticize you, Nagafuji, but
Yeah?
Why are you buying pastries?
I pointed at Nagafuji, now holding up the bag she'd been handed by the store lady with a carton of milk and an Anpan roll, and an egg sandwich inside it. It seemed that she'd completely forgotten about our plan to go to the cafeteria. Her eyes moved toward the bottom of the bag.
Right. That's how it was.
She took the bag, and the item inside it shook with it.
Also, it's pretty strange that you'd come here with me in the first place.
You should have told me.
That really was the kind of thing I wanted her to realize by herself without someone else having to tell her. Although, I suppose that might have been too much to ask of Nagafuji.
Well then, gotta go.
She stated before turning around and setting off toward the cafeteria. I quickly called to her.
Hey, if you're free after school, would you mind going shopping with me?
This seemed as good of an opportunity as any to invite her. Mere seconds after my question had reached her ear, Nagafuji nodded.
Sure, I don't mind. What are you buying, though? Something delicious?
Had she accepted my invitation under the assumption that she'd get to eat something? I wasn't against buying Adachi food as a gift, although I did wonder, did she have a favorite?
I need to buy a Christmas present, but since I don't really know much about that stuff, I thought I'd ask you.
Seeing how Nagafuji had an history of exchanging gifts with Hino, she might have been able to help me pick a good present for Adachi. Personality-wise, she also seemed the kind of person who could simply walk in and pick something without thinking too hard about it. A part of me was afraid that, if I were to try choosing the present by myself, I wouldn't be able to decide in time for Christmas.
Who is the present for? For me?
You could tell she was overjoyed from the way she pointed toward herself.
No, not for you.
I stated bluntly, crushing her dreams.
It's for my little sister.
I decided to lie at the last second. It felt like Nagafuji might get the wrong idea if I told her it was for Adachi, and I really didn't need that to happen right now. She tilted her head.
You have a little sister, Shimamura?
Yes, I do. A small one.
I also have another one that started in me. I decided to not say that part.
Hino's small too.
Yeah, I guess she is.
Nagafuji nodded to herself, seeming satisfied. I kinda wanted to ask her if there was a point to her saying that.
Anyway, see you after school then.
With that, I parted ways with her and returned to the classroom. I found myself thinking about that expression, little sister, on my way there. Adachi, a little sister. I wasn't really sure how to feel about it. She had called me Big Sis, so I suppose there was that. Really, the only discrepancies that remained was her being taller than me rather than shorter. So, no problem? Maybe? Thinking about it, this might actually have been the first time I spent time with Nagafuji without Hino being there. I'd done it with Hino before, like that time we went fishing together, but never the other way around. Turns out, between needing to participate in club activities and having to tend to their family stores, she lived quite a busy life.
You're so busy that by the time school ended, you'd forgotten that you'd agreed to shopping with me?
No, it's because I forgot to write it on my palm.
Nagafuji said while shaking her hand in the hair with a blank expression on her face. Oh, I should explain. I had caught her about to leave school without me. We eventually made our way to the mall's parking lot. Really, it was at times like these that I found myself missing Adachi's bike. Maybe I should save up money and buy a cheap one for myself?
Nagafuji, you've never considered learning how to ride a bike?
No need to. Hino has one.
I see.
I suppose that made sense. We walked past the smoking area and entered the building. I suggested that we walk a lap around the mall as we thought about what to get, followed by a quick glance to make sure Nagafuji still remembered what we were here to buy.
I know that it's late to be asking this, but Hino didn't come along? I thought that she might.
She said that she had something else. Or wait, was I the one who said that to her?
Nagafuji pondered to herself while tilting her head. She reacted the same way whenever I asked her something, and I kinda got the feeling my question always gave her a hard time. Anyhow, it seemed that she remembered our plan well enough to talk about them to Hino. I wonder what had ultimately led her to forgetting. It was pretty interesting to think about. We walked past the wine store by the entrance without as much as looking at it, but the bread shop that came after caught Nagafuji's attention. It was pretty ominous, the way she continued walking toward with her head turned toward it.
Wouldn't pastries do?
No, they would not.
I pushed Nagafuji's shoulder to make her walk faster. I needed to get her eyes off the sweet potato buns. I was reminded the last time I'd gone there as we walked past the tea shop next. Hino had been with me, and so had Nagafuji. Though I'd been told that they were a heavy drinker in our family, the sheer amount of tea Hino had ended up walking away with still managed to shock me. And it wasn't just the volume. All added up, the total price was way beyond 10,000 yen. With thoughts like those appearing in my head and then fading away, we made our way toward the aisles. There, I saw a Christmas tree. Its colorful decorations were bombastic and oozed with splendor, and looking at them, I could feel myself getting nostalgic. Whenever I'd seen one as a child, I'd always wanted to climb it. Yes, I'd loved the heights back then. Everything looked different from up there, and I'd often found myself searching for such places. Perhaps I'd been yearning for a way to reach a new world, a world different from the one I lived in. Thinking back to what an adventurous child I had been, it really felt like I was observing a resident of some distant world. I wonder, would the old man view the current me the same way? It'd been so long I couldn't remember anymore, but my journey to this distant world likely hadn't been without its fair share of painful experience. If it had been me doing that, then I probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
Now then, have you come up with somewhere we should go?
I asked Nagafuji. It felt pretty pointless just walking around randomly without a destination.
Let's see.
Nagafuji mumbled before glancing over at the nearby store windows. The way she spun her head was quite exaggerated.
Maybe she wants a boomerang.
What kind of suggestion was that? Had she suddenly awakened as a hunter? Also, where had she seen one of those? It was all electronics and phone stars around us.
Kids love those things, I think. Although, I guess it might snap in half if you start throwing it around during the winter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She meant it as a present for my little sister. In that case, it might Not have been a bad choice. Still, was it really a suitable present for Adachi? Who knows? Maybe she developed a hobby out of throwing it at birds.
I think we should aim for something a bit more on the practical side. My sister is very mature for her age, you see.
Practical, huh?
Was that the word in Nagafuji's lexicon? The fact that she'd randomly suggested a boomerang made me think not.
What about buying a dozen or so croquettes from our store?
Oh, wow, you're quite a salesman, aren't you?
While croquettes definitely scored full point as far as practically was concerned, they'd be cold by the time I got home. Wait, was that really the most relevant problem here? Nagafuji mumbled as she scratched her head and began walking forward. I quickly followed after her. It was starting to become clear that I might have chosen the wrong person to ask for help. Still, walking, our eyes turned to the right. There were sitting kitchen knives and cutting boards there, including a board shaped like a fish. Nagafuji stared at it hard.
Maybe a fishing rod.
I think that's more something that Hina would like.
I stated, rejecting her suggestion. She'd really said that just because the cutting board made her think of fishing, hadn't she? Next, Nagafuji's eyes turned to the left. The sweet store there immediately caught her attention.
What about a box of roly-poly cakes?
Those are more New Year's than they are Christmas, I think.
Yeah, they are.
Nagafuji continued walking forward. She didn't commit at all to her suggestion, huh? The two stores that appeared next were a cleaning shop and a foot therapy place that, for some reason, had a picture of a bear painted outside of it. Nagafuji's eye turned toward the former.
What about a washing machine?
Wait a second.
You're just naming random stuff that catches your attention. Are you?
Yeah?
She didn't even try to hide it. Instead, she pointed at her glasses, almost as if to say that I could trust her eyesight.
Like they say, even the crappiest shooter will hit the target with enough shots. If I keep naming stuff, we should land on something good eventually. It's like brainstorming. You throw all your ideas into a pile and then pick out the good ones. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
A long, winding explanation really drove the point home. Still, even though this was a lot coming from Nagafuji, and I did appreciate that, the fact remained that she was missing a core step. You were meant to actually think about the ideas after you'd thrown them out there. And I just couldn't imagine her doing that. Call it a sneaking suspicion, but I was convinced that the moment a new idea popped into her head, she forgot all about that last one. She was like a character from a comedy show.
You said that you used to exchange presents with Hino, right? What were those like?
Maybe that was the one question that I'd needed to ask her all this time.
I gave her a sales license.
License to sell what? A license that applied where? He was the kind of person that came with a whole pile of questions. Asking them all one by one seemed pretty tiresome too, and I decided not to.
And Hino gave you.
People's Honor Award.
How old were you when you did this again?
Seniors.
Why had I even bothered to ask? The relationship between those two went way over my head. We then continued going from store to store, with Nagafuji listing out random items as she saw them. Then, when I thought that we had gone through pretty much the entire first floor, I found myself standing in front of a store called Sise. It was a fashion store, with all sorts of clothes, shoes, and other such items placed in the window. I considered walking in, but after thinking about it for a moment, decided not to. It felt like too much. Christmas presents were ultimately just gifts for a friend, meaning that they needed to be something that could be received without hesitation. At least that's what I thought. I conveyed that opinion to Nagafuji, and she nodded back to me. There probably wasn't any particular meaning to it. Anyway, we look around again, meaning that it was about time that...
Alright. A boomerang might be the answer after all.
There it was.
Back to that, huh?
She always went back to the boomerang. If this was a joke, I wasn't laughing.
Boomerang! Boomerang!
Nagagafuji began singing while turning her and throwing one.
I'm starting to feel like you'd like to have one of those.
That's also true.
She stayed before tapping her large chest. Whether she was proud or sarcastic, I honestly couldn't tell.
You can trust me. I'm the kind of person who understands kids.
I kinda doubt kids can understand you, though.
I always eat my curry mild. That's a kid thing, right?
I think you meant to say, that's the only kind of curry you can eat.
Boomerang!
My remark had gone unnoticed. Nagafuji continued moving her arms around, and was now even twisting her hips. Her expressionless face really felt out of place.
If you went with a boomerang, it'd also let you and your little sister play together.
Yeah, I suppose.
I went ahead and imagined myself throwing a boomerang with Adachi at the park. There would be silently tossing it back and forth. It seems surprisingly fun, honestly.
You could go to the park to toss and catch it.
Are you sure you're not thinking of a frisbee?
Maybe. Anyway, why don't we go test it out? I'll buy one and let you play with it. Then you'll know.
When did you switch careers from selling meat into selling boomerangs?
With a delighted look on her face, Nagafuji grabbed my hand and guided me to the escalator. I decided to just let it happen. While I did have my doubts regarding whether or not that was the kind of thing that was sold anywhere, as it turned out, there were some on sale in the sports store that Nagafuji ended up dragging me up to the third floor. The way she picked one to buy without any hesitation caused me to think that she'd already been eyeing on them. The mirror was shaped like the letter B, exactly what I had imagined when I heard the name. It was yellow and made of plastic. Anyway, while in the store, I could feel the man behind the counter staring at us suspiciously. I suppose it was quite strange for two high school girls to just walk in and then buy just a boomerang. Then again, in 40 or maybe even 60% of the cases, those sorts of the stores were aimed towards Nagafuji's chest. Despite her general appearance giving off the impression that she was quite a simple person, the frown that always formed on her face seemed to imply that even Nagafuji was sensitive to those stores. At least to some extent. I could definitely sympathize with her. Being well off came with its own set of problems. A set of problems I was planning to tackle in the future, mind you. Anyway, while I was busy trying to show up for no reason, Nagafuji finished paying and received the boomerang from the man. At last, she had obtained it. We exited the store, and she immediately pulled the boomerang out of her bag. We were really going to be walking around the mall with her holding it in the hand?
Now, let's go test it out right away.
I kind of feel like I already have enough to make a decision. Hey!
Completely ignoring my excuses, Nagafuji grabbed my arm and pulled me. So I did fight back initially, seeing how happy she looked swinging the boomerang around. I eventually gave up. Sometimes you couldn't go against the flow. That was how this world works. Still, it was quite impressive for Nagafuji to be able to single-handedly create such a flow. We exited the mall, walked through the parking lot, and soon found ourselves at the nearby fountain plaza behind a gyudon place. The fountain was still spraying out water despite it being winter, which might have been the reason why there weren't any children around. Regardless, this was a pretty good place for throwing the boomerang around. There were hardly any trees, just some random statues. Had there been a lot of trees, the only outcome I could imagine resulting from that was the boomerang flying into one and either getting stuck or breaking. Nagafuji handed her back to me and got ready to throw the boomerang. Holding it vertically instead of horizontally, she brought it back, tip almost touching her wrist. She then tossed it into the distance. The boomerang flew effortlessly all the way to the center of the plaza. The body tube was perfectly smooth, almost as if it was gliding up one. There was no roughness to it, no sudden turns or twists. After soaring through the air for a while, the boomerang eventually reached its limit. It then turned around and, having at some point flipped to be aligned horizontally, began making its way back, like a loyal companion of some kind. My eyes were overwhelmed, and so were my ears. I could hear the flying object whizzing louder and louder as it slowly approached us. I was left amazed. The boomerang had been completely silent when it left Nagafuji's hand, but on the way back, not so much. Whiz, what the sound its blades made as it rapidly approaches, drawing a beautiful curve behind it. Almost as if responding to the sound, Nagafuji crouched down and stuck both of her eyes. She then proceeded to catch the boomerang by clapping her hands around it, almost like how you catch a sword. Then, as if nothing had happened, she stood up and struck it.
Good. It's the kind that comes back.
Aren't they all like that?
There are some badly made ones too. Here you go.
I handed her the bag, and she gave me the boomerang. I stared at it. There it was, a single boomerang, shaped like the letter B. I'd gone and bought a Christmas present, and this was that I had walked away with. Why?
You shouldn't throw it with all you have since it's your first time. You're not wearing any safety goggles either.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not quite that daring.
I pulled the boomerang back, imitating the way Nagafuji had held it. Then, complying to her warning, I tossed it quickly. The throw wasn't a failure, however, and as the toy flew forwards for a while before turning around and then returning, I hadn't had any sort of expectation when I tossed it, and so I found myself paralyzed as I stared at it speeding back towards me. I ended up instinctively ducking down and covering my head with my hands out of the fear that I might get hit. As a result, the boomerang swished right past me, ultimately reaching the corner of the park before landing. I ran to it, pick it up, brush the sand off it, and toss it again. This time, with the expectation that it will fly. While its trajectory was undeniably less sharp than when Nagafuji had thrown it, the mover still traveled quite the distance. The way it returned, giving the illusion of stopping completely, and switching the direction it rotated, plus the sound it made, merged with my own heartbeat. I stuck my hands out this time in order to catch it, but unfortunately, to no avail. The boomerang simply bounced off my fingers and fell to the ground. It seemed that, just like with throwing it, catching it also required practice.
This might actually be pretty fun.
That was how I honestly felt after seeing it return to me. Still, as I was a little bummed about not having been able to catch it, I decided to try it one more time. This time, I threw it even slower than I had previously, almost as if I was making it swing through the air. I'd also aim slightly upwards, which might have been in part why, much to my surprise, it didn't end up flying all that far. In the end, the boomerang lacked the speed necessary to make it back to me, and instead landed on the ground before me. Turns out, it mattered a great deal what angle you threw it at. Really, this was fun.
So, what do you think?
Nagafuji suddenly asked me, her hands resting on my shoulders. When had she gotten there?
I thought that it might suck, but it really doesn't.
Hooray!
She yelled monotonously while simultaneously hugging me. I quickly tore her off me. Still a boomerang? Huh. Unlike a food gift that will be gone after she ate it, a toy such as this one allowed her to play with it whenever she felt like it, giving it a value in practical sense. Wait, no, that didn't sound right. I felt like I was both being tricked and making a mistake at the same time. The sky had cleared up, and as a result, I could see that the sun was now starting to set. Its rays painted the distant horizon orange. It had been a while since the last time I'd come to face with this kind of a scene, even though it was one that I'd often viewed with my friends when I'd been younger. Each time the boomerang blended into the sky and then returned, it was like regaining a lost memory. Nostalgia pressing against my back, I gripped the boomerang. I then released it towards the sky, and, as if I was myself soaring through the air, I showed the boomerang I'd bought to my little sister after returning home.
What do you think?
What's that?
Instead of an answer, I was met with another question. This was hopeless.
Yeah, I wonder. What is it?
I asked before making the sound of a timer running out with my mouth, and then ding. My sister placed her hand against her chin and thought about it hard. She examined the boomerang from all angles, until at last slamming the imaginary answer button in front of her.
I know. It's a hanger that's missing the top part.
That was her final answer. Just a little bit off. After all that, it was finally time. Christmas was here. I never seen snow falling on the 25th of December. I stared at the sky, at a word that didn't at all match the occasion. Certain that being special really was just something humans had made up, wasn't it? Regardless, there was no way that I was going to let the weather get the better of me. Though it did come with its fair share of problems, today I will be the one of the people throwing themselves into that flow, that whirlpool. It was just before noon when I finished my preparations. Fixed my hair one last time. I headed to the kitchen to let Mom know that I was leaving. Conveniently, my sister also happened to be there, eating lunch.
I'm going out for a bit. Oof, 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 oof. Sure. With your boyfriend? I keep telling you, I don't have one.
I repeat, shaking my hand sideways with emphasis. Just how many times was she going to ask me that?
What? What?
My sister swung her head back and forth, demanding an explanation. She looked at me, then Mom, all the while busy munching her food.
I'm going out with a friend for a bit.
What?
The look on her face made it clear that she wasn't satisfied. She sprang up from her chair and marched next to me.
Ora? You're still going to be eating dinner at home, right?
I answered Mom with a small nod.
I intend to. I'll text you if I happen to change plans, but it most likely won't happen.
Hey, tell me. Where are you going? Tell me.
It was my little sister who spoke this time. Her question was followed by a series of kicks aimed towards my legs. Outside of the house, she always behaved like a good girl, but when dealing with me, she was ruthless. I smacked her forehead before looking down, and saw that she was puffing her cheeks. Her lips were also pouting.
Oh. Oh! You want me to tell you?
She asked in a smiley way, mimicking her words.
Tell me. Tell me now.
She yelled while swinging her hands above her head, almost like she was waving away a cloud of mist or something. Continuing to ignore her demands, I pushed my arms under hers and lifted her up high in the air. She'd gotten quite heavy, hadn't she? Her kicking and struggling probably also played a part in it feeling that way.
You haven't lost all of your cuteness yet, huh?
Hey, let me down.
Her short legs frantically kicked back and forth, unable to find the floor. It was there that I noticed that she wasn't wearing socks. It took quite a bit of mental fortitude to go barefoot during winter. What a strong kid she was! Now then, I had things to do.
I'll be back before dinner, so don't eat the cake without me, okay?
The way I treated her like a child, after letting her down, caused her to stick her tongue out to me, treating her like a child. She was a child. I patted the head of my pouting sister once before heading towards the front door. Turns out, despite acting like a brat a lot of the time, she hadn't yet stopped adoring me. It felt pretty nice knowing that. Still, I had to wonder, will the same be true in 3 years' time? What about 4? Regardless, it really helped having something to cheer me up right now. Because going outside while it was this cold was almost certainly going to have the opposite effect. It was like having a bucket heater in my heart, protecting me from the cold and its tendency to get me down. I found myself sagging instantly as I took my shoes and put them on. In the end, I hadn't managed to come up with anything for me and Adachi to do. What awaited me from here on was completely up in the air. Had Adachi thought up anything? Or had she thought about it too much and ended up with something weird? Out of those two, I had to say that I was more worried about the latter.
Anyway,
I was going to be eating dinner at home. As such, If we were going for lunch, fried chicken will be a pass from me. That might not have been a lot to go by, but it was all I had as I left the house. For everything else, you have to see how it turned out. Now then, Christmas, Christmas.
Bonus chapter Bishop the Visitor Part 3. Eating chicken curry on Christmas was a tradition in our family. A cliché, you could even call it.
Why?
Hino asked, busy eating her second serving of that curry. How inconsiderate of her to come over despite it being Christmas. My mother and father had both welcomed her in a smile of their faces, so making it seem like they're already accept her as one of ours.
I was asked what I wanted to eat, and I said curry.
And because it's Christmas, you put chicken in it? Yeah, I get it now.
Hino's cheeks rapidly changed shape as she munched down on the piece of potato she tossed into her mouth. As I stared at her doing so, I found myself yearning after what I saw. Yearning for the curry, I meant, not for her cheeks. Well, not that I mind those either.
Give me a bite.
Huh? Good grief. Okay, just a bite.
What sort of a reaction was that? She didn't know that this curry was mine, right? Furthermore, the spoonful she'd offered me only contained carrots. I still ate it though. Delicious. Just so you know, breakfast tomorrow morning was going to consist of curry. Same with dinner, most likely.
This curry is really good.
Hina stated, her comment aimed at my mother who was busy preparing chicken on the store side.
Thanks.
She replied, her forehead dripped with sweat, despite it being winter, although this was most likely due to the flame she was standing next to.
You still like your own family's curry the best, right?
No, we only eat Japanese-style food.
Hino said. As she did, her face twisted into a wry smile. Right, thinking back to it, they usually did have either kombu or chickpeas out of snacks when I went there. It was a pretty fresh experience for me, snacks that weren't sweet.
Even when we do have curry, once in a blue moon, it's always made of tofu. Not a fan.
Spinning her spoon around, Hino's eyes turned towards the calendar hanging off the wall. The word curry had been written in tiny letters inside the square of the 25th day. It was my handwriting. Why exactly had I felt the need to write it down? Despite my best efforts, I couldn't manage to remember.
Christmas, huh? Just one more week, and then that's that for this year.
Indeed.
I nodded slightly while looking up at the calendar. I'd been told that I wouldn't be receiving any more New Year's gifts after I started high school, and as a result, it wasn't a time of the year that I was particularly looking forward to. Hino probably still received them, huh? Feeling a little jealous, I turned to face her.
Hey, Nagafuji, do you ever think about the future?
Was that really the kind of question to ask out of nowhere? It sounded really complex and hard to answer.
How far into the future are we talking about here? Tomorrow? The New Year?
Thinking about anything further than a week away would probably be impossible for you, huh?
Having finished her bowl of curry, Hino now took a sip of tea. She then placed the cup on the table before propping her chin up with her own.
For example, in 10 years, we probably won't be able to act this carefree, right? Like, we'll both be too busy with our jobs to be eating curry at 3 in the afternoon. Plus, it's not even a given that we'll be together anyway. Thinking about it that way, it really makes you appreciate how nice it is to have lots of free time. Then again, it can also stress you out by making you feel like you have to make the best of it.
Just like I thought, this topic was simply out of my league. What was I going to be like in 10 years? I had no clue.
Wow, Hino, even you think about some pretty difficult stuff, huh?
That even you really bothers me.
She also said something that bothered me. That was her not being sure if we'd be together in 10 years. Though I obviously wasn't able to give her other questions the kind of answers what she sought, that one part, I felt like I had an answer for it. I put my crappy memory, crappy according to Hino who had told me that 3 times, though I only remember the most recent one, to use and try my hardest to recall what it was. Oh, right.
I think it'll be fine.
Huh? Which part?
We're going to be friends forever. You said it yourself while we were coming back from seeing a film.
We'd been in our second year of elementary school back then. I was pretty sure. What sort of film had it been? That I couldn't remember. As for Hino, it seemed that she had forgotten the entire statement. At least, that was the way her gaze jumped around seemed to imply.
I said that? Really?
I replied with a yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think we'll be together, even in 10 years.
We will definitely be if we want to. If both of us want to. For a second, Hino remained silent and simply scratched her neck. Cheek. She then laughed. What a weirdo she'd become.
Since we've been together for the past 10 years, the next 10 years won't bring any changes with them, huh? Nothing. Anyway, can I have another bowl of curry?
Go home.
We'd once again skip all the polite traditions, but even without those, I had a feeling that the next year would end up going just fine.